you. Thank you, Atlanta. You know, we've done a lot of events throughout the South, but we've never had a turnout like this. Thank you very much. And let me thank Killer Mike. That was quite an introduction. Now, Killer Mike is, as you all know, a great rapper, but he is a lot more than that. He's trying to talk truth throughout this country and, in fact, throughout the world, trying to bring people together. Mike, thanks very much for what you're doing. This afternoon, here in Atlanta, I was able to visit the very beautiful Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change. And I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. King's daughter, Dr. Bernice King. And to me, that was a very moving visit because Dr. King is one of my heroes and clearly one of the great leaders in the modern history of the United States of America. He was a great leader because he was a man not only of great intelligence and great courage, he was a guy who was beaten time and time again, thrown in jail time and time again, but he kept his eyes on the prize. And that's a lesson. Victory does not come easily. Struggle does not come easily. And what we need to do is to keep our eyes on the prize as he did. Always fighting for what he called the beloved community. His vision for a world of justice, of peace, and equality for all humanity. That was his vision. And Dr. King was a great leader because he understood a profound truth. It was true in his lifetime, true before him, and true today. That real change always takes place from the bottom on up, never from the top down. And that's why he and his associates were extraordinary organizers, organizing millions of people throughout this country to stand up to racism, to stand up to segregation, and to create a more just society. And he was a great leader because he believed in democracy and he believed in the importance of people being involved in the political process. And he spent an enormous amount of time and energy to tenaciously fight for the Voting Rights Act so that people in this country, all people, have the right to vote regardless of the color of their skin. And that's a lesson, and Killer Mike just made that point, that I want all of you and all Americans to appreciate. It's not only Dr. King, it's people in World War II in countries, fighting in countries throughout the world to defend American democracy. And when you turn your back on democracy, when you say, I'm just too busy to vote, or I don't really care, or I don't believe in the political process, you're turning your back not only on Dr. King, but on God knows how many men and women who fought and died to protect democracy in this country. And Dr. King was a great leader because he continued to grow and expand his vision. Now, you don't necessarily know this if you watch the TV, but the truth is, he did much more than just fight segregation and racism. What he did against enormous opposition from the establishment, opposition from people who contributed money to his organization. He said, you know, I, Dr. King, have been a proponent of nonviolence my entire life. And I see America engaged in a war in Vietnam that they should not be engaged in. And I must speak out against that war. He didn't have to do that, but he did. Furthermore, he was a great leader because he understood that justice in America was even more than civil rights. It was economic rights as well. And what he said was that, of course, we have to end segregation at lunch counters and at hotels and at universities and schools. But then he also said, what difference does it make if a family can't afford to send their kid to those schools or eat in that restaurant? And I hope all of you will remember where he was and what he was doing when he was assassinated in 1968. He was standing shoulder to shoulder with sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, union workers who were being exploited, workers who were earning wages much too low, workers who were having work conditions absolutely horrendous. And he said, I will stand with you. Because he understood that to be free in America meant that you have to have economic rights. You have to earn a living wage. And I hope you'll all remember that in the last months of his life, he was prepared to take on the entire establishment and take a hard look at the national priorities of America. And he was organizing, not a lot of people know this or remember this, but he was organizing what he called a Poor People's March. It was a march of African Americans, of whites, of Latinos, of Native Americans. And it was the coming together of all exploited people to demand that the United States government started passing policies which represented all of the people, not just the people on top. And in fact, in the last months of his life, he talked about a nation which had socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor. Atlanta is the city in which Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife, Coretta Scott King, have their final resting place. And I hope that all of you in Atlanta will do everything that you can to keep the extraordinary vision of Dr. King alive. And what I want to do, and what we've been doing throughout this campaign, and the reason why I think our campaign has had as much success as it has had, is that we are simply treating the American people with intelligence. And what that means is that in a democratic society, politics is more than a 30-second ad. Politics is the need to lay out on the table the problems facing our country and in a respectful, intelligent way, figure out how we go from here to there.
Including FBI officials. Look.
Well, I don't know why that's funny.
And politics is also an understanding, as Dr. King understood, that nothing real changes, that we don't make the change that we have to unless millions of people get involved in the political process, what I call a political revolution. And when all across this country, working people and low-income people and people of color and people who are gay and people who were born in other countries, when we understand that we're not going to allow them to divide us up, we're not going to allow them to scapegoat one group or another. When we come together And when we say loudly and clearly, enough is enough, that this great country and our government belong to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And that is what this campaign is about. It's a coming together. It's a telling people who have given up on the political process, you better come back in. And when we talk about politics in America, let me tell you what no other candidate for president will tell you, and that is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. Moral responsibility to lead the world, to work with China and Russia and India in transforming this planet's energy system away from fossil fuel and as your president, that is exactly what I will do. What this campaign is about is thinking big, not small. It's not accepting the worldview that many provide to us. It is asking the hard questions of why not? Why is the United States of America the wealthiest country in the history of the world? Why are we the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a right? Now, I am a member of the Health Education Committee, the committee that helped write the Affordable Care Act. And it is obvious to anyone who is not deeply prejudiced that the Affordable Care Act has done a lot of good in this country. The Affordable Care Act has provided insurance for many millions of people who previously did not have it. It has done away with the obscenity of pre-existing conditions. It has developed community health centers all over America. But let me say this, let me make 2 points. Number one, it is, as somebody who helped write the bill, I can tell you that none of us were of the belief that there would be governors throughout America, including Georgia, including South Carolina, who would refuse to expand Medicaid. In Georgia, as I understand it, some 600,000 people are not getting health insurance because governors and members of the legislature are more concerned with ideology than they are with the health of their people. That's wrong. But what we also have to do is to understand that despite the gains of the Affordable Care Act, we still have 29 million Americans with no health insurance. We still have even more, including many in this room, who are underinsured with high deductibles and co-payments. We still have a situation where our life expectancy is lower than many other countries and our health care outcomes are not as good, yet we spend by far more money per capita on health care than any other country. That is why I believe that what we must do is join the rest of the world, make sure that health care is a right, not a privilege. And guarantee health care to all people through a Medicare for All single-payer program. And when we do that, I want you to know what it means. It means not only that families will save substantial sums of money on health care, because the current system is the most expensive in the world. It will mean that millions of workers who are now in jobs they do not want to be in, but are there because of the health insurance they're getting, those workers will be able to leave those jobs and do what they want to do, which will be a huge asset for our economy. It means that small and medium-sized businesses will not have to spend half their lives worrying about health care, and they can worry about their business. Now, when we talk about the issues that face us as a country, there is no question in my mind that we must, once and for all, end institutional racism in this country. And reform a very, very broken criminal justice system. Now, all of you have seen the same videos that I have seen. All of you are aware of the names Sandra Bland and Michael Brown and Rekia Boyd and Eric Garner and Walter Scott and Freddie Gray and many others who died at the hands of police officers or in police custody. Now, let me say, I was a mayor of the city of Burlington for 8 years, and I worked very closely with the police department there. And what I will tell you, what I believe to be true, not only in Burlington, but all over this country, vast majority of police officers are honest and hardworking and trying to do their best in a very difficult situation. It is not easy being a police officer today, but like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. And when we look at criminal justice reform, it is clear to me that we must demilitarize our police departments. The best police departments in the country, and there are many great police departments, are part of the community, not being seen as an oppressive force. We need to make certain that police departments look like the community they are serving. We need new rules regarding the allowable use of force. Lethal force should be a last resort, not a first resort. We need to end the absurdity of private corporations making profits by building and running jails. We need to understand that substance abuse, a very serious problem in my state and all over America, is a health issue, not a criminal issue. Which means we must invest in drug courts and medical and mental health intervention rather than more incarceration. We need to take a very hard look at the so-called war on drugs, which has destroyed so many lives. There are many, many hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, over a long period of time, who have received police records for possessing marijuana. And some have been jailed. But when you have a police record, your life is radically changed. It becomes more difficult to get a job, more difficult to get credit, more difficult to do all of the things that one wants to do in one's life. And that is why I have just introduced legislation, and will make happen as president, to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Right now, as part of the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is in the Schedule I class, right alongside heroin. So I'm not advocating for marijuana, but what I am saying is I do not want to see more and more lives being destroyed because of possession of marijuana. Furthermore, and very, very importantly, we need a path back from prison. Too often people are released from prison. They don't have the education they need. They don't have the jobs they need. They don't have the money they need. They don't have the housing they need. And shock of all shocks, they fall back into the environment that got them in prison in the first place. That has got to change. And when we talk about issues of importance to our country, I hope everybody here knows that today there are 11 million people in this country who are undocumented. And let me be very clear. I regard it as reprehensible that you got politicians who are demagoguing these folks with racist and outrageous attacks. There are politicians who are trying to open the door to racism, whether it's against our Hispanic brothers and sisters, whether it's against Muslims, and we are going to shut that door closed. This country, and in the city of Martin Luther King Jr., this city and this country know we have